I am online.
So I was watching this documentary on Rodney Mullen. What is this sort of documentary? Some clips and stuff. He's like one of probably the most innovative skateboarder, right? In just like so many different levels, and he's like he's a real smart, articulate guy, and then he's just like this real introvert, and he's this real artist with a skateboard. Like just all the different tricks, and just like the level of discipline and focus that he has, right? Well, yeah, I just found something really appealing about him and just his sort of his focus, right? And I was thinking about that in terms of just any sort of anything with that sort of degree of dedication and focus, like meditation. Like there's some people they just get really dedicated to meditation and spiritual states. And does that apply at all?
I'm not sure what you mean by does that apply.
Well, I mean like that sort of. I don't know, maybe this sort of boils down to, oh, is there something special about? Because maybe that's part of what I'm trying to get at. Because there's just something that really appeals to my sensibilities about that, right? What I see him do,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think about that like in terms of like that could be a meditative practice. He calls it a meditation, right? Term kind of lightly, but like there's certain people that they work at like specific meditation practices, and it seems like that's very productive and it's very worthwhile. But now then you're probably going to say, but not for realization.
Well, all talent and all motivation is a display of and is done by reality itself, of course. Or as is degrees of lack of talent and degrees of lack of motivation. But I mean, a simple way to look at it is there is field of energies, and all of these energies come together and come together in consonance and have tension against each other in dissonance with varying degrees. It's like waves in an ocean. If you sit on the beach watching the waves, stuff coming in, every wave's a little different. Some waves are little, and some waves sort of fall apart, and some waves build to be very big as the confluence of forces that make these things up have a dance with each other in terms of coming together and reinforcing or canceling each other out, or all these various other things. And of course, all phenomena are essentially like this, as the nature of all of these infinite energies that show up, constituting apparent form, make their nature revealed in the functioning of these forms. And if you have a form whose nature seems predominantly, a particular confluence of forces that reinforce in a certain direction, then you'll have an exceptional functionality in whatever way that is. or contrarily, an exceptional dysfunctionality, which is just an example of exactly the same thing. So it's no better or no worse. But none of these things are anything in themselves, because the only thing that's here is these virtual forces juxtaposed against each other. And all seemingly phenomena and all seeming event is just what that looks like. So the forces are what's actually here, or call it the flavors of the radiance, if you like. And what it looks like is what we think of as events and beings and entities and natures and personalities and all this stuff.
This sort of leads into the topic of cities.
Mm-hmm.
So Rodney Mullen, like he does these crazy things with a skateboard. It's like even other like super high level skateboarders, they can't do it. And there's so it seems like that's to a certain extent what a city is.
Yeah, all talents are the nature of city. Well, city is city is glorified in very spiritual context, but all the functionality, the apparent functionality of energy forms is city, and all the dysfunctionality is also city. City is just the fact that shit happens, you might say, but it all happens in the same way. And so an exceptional being, who coincidentally, or let's just say arbitrarily, the energies are lined up in a certain way that certain particular functionalities are manifest strongly, then those functionalities will play themselves out and perhaps refine themselves as they may, apparently, in the apparent course of events, and produce refinements and elaborations and so on and so forth. But all of that is nothing other than the standing wave patterns of the inherent energy. You know what standing waves are, right?
It's like a harmonic wave, or
you could think of this that way. That's fine. It's the way waves interact. You know what a moray pattern is? No. Okay. Well, anyway, don't worry about it. I'll show you sometime.
Is that like what the energy is doing that gives the appearance of like patterns or things staying in like a certain kind of way? Yeah.
Any and all patterns are artifacts, are like standing wave patterns, apparent standing wave patterns of the inherent wave energy in its own internal degrees of reinforcement and cancellation, or harmony and disharmony, and so on and so forth. And so this shows up as what we think of as forms and entities and events and interactions and so on and so forth. But it isn't. But none of that is what it seems to be. All it really is the energies themselves, and their sort of the dance of the energies, you could say.
Cool.
Yeah, it is actually. It's very cool.
So you can look at that pattern of energy at any particular point, and it will sometimes look like something incredible, and other times it will look like nothing.
Absolutely.
But it's all the same stuff.
Yeah, it's all the same, and the patterns don't stay apparently static, and they can develop and like a wave, like a apparent wave at the beach. It can come in, it can build, or it can get smaller, or it can dissipate, or it can break, or it can look like it's going to be something and then peter out and turn out to be nothing, and so on and so forth. And or we see that in our own. If you look at yourself and look at your personality and your functioning, and some days you have a good day, some days you have a bad day, some days, you just screw everything up. Other days you really, things line up and you really hit it, whatever.
Yeah.
But everything is exactly that, and just like that.
And synchronicity is, or intuition, psychic abilities, synchronicity. It's just a sort of, there is a felt sense of the intelligence of the system coming together to reinforce some wave pattern of energy or something.
Sure. You know, and the patterns are all virtual patterns. They aren't actually manifested in space and time. So there's also a fractal. So each energy pattern is actually all energy patterns. But it looks like there. I mean, it's impossible to describe. So the nature, you know, the nature of this glass reflects all nature everywhere. All energy patterns are reflected in this energy pattern. But it looks like this here because that's what all energy patterns look like here. But what here is inscrutable and mysterious because there isn't actually a here. But here shows up because of this way in which the energy you can see this infinite fractal, so it seems to be spread out arbitrarily from the way our sensoria seems to work.
And that's exactly the same energy pattern, the same thing.
Mm-hmm. But there it looks like that, here it looks like this.
That's the nature of patterns.
Yeah. So, and this applies to you too. So you are the pattern that you are, and all other patterns that appear are that pattern, are you. But you look like you from you. From me, it looks like me, and all other patterns appear as aspects of me. So again, it's an absolute inclusiveness that is infinitely what's the word you say, distributed.
Wild.
Well, wild, yeah. But it's like taking a deck of cards and fanning it out so all the cards are there. So all the energy is like an infinite deck of cards, but for some reason it fans itself out, and then so you see all of this apparent spread out and differentiation of this is here and that's there and this is here.
But when you come down to it, they're all the same space.
Is this your card?
Well, it is wild for you to kind of entertain the possibility or the idea that, nobody has any idea what I'm seeing.
Of course.
And for me to even entertain that idea, is that, I have, I have this sort of the deck of cards there, and then I see the thing going on. I don't even have any idea of what this, apparent entity appears to be like.
Of course not. How can you?
Well, and we were talking at the retreat in Seattle about, and I guess one of my big buts is mortality. That there is a me, and there is the possibility that I'll die, or that kind of shadows me all the time as a awareness that I have. And even though I know that it's completely untrue, but I'm interested to sort of see where that, what you have to say about that.
Well, mortality as such, death as such, as a simple event that we imagine is going to happen, is a fantasy, it's a projection. Because you can't know what death is going to look like. You know what death looks like from outside, but you can't know what death is going to look like from inside.
Yeah.
And there's no you to die, because if you look at the energy patterns that appear as you, they're continually morphing. So in this one sense, they're continually dying.
Yeah. Every
Every time you go to sleep, your waking self dies. And every time you go into a dream, your deep sleep self dies, and so on and so forth. And every instant, I mean, every time the dream changes, all the previous yous that were in the dream are no longer are dead. So, the eternal nature of the change of appearance is a given. It's a constant. It's of the essence of the way this apparition works. But the you that is an observer, let's say, which is a fantasy in itself, but anyway, be that as it may, the you that is an observer can't be found as an object, and can't be found as anything that's dependent on any form. So forms come and go, forms appear and disappear, and the you that's an observer is untouched. It's absolutely pristine. It's not dependent upon or invested in these forms. Now, mind you, we have this seeming body which seems to come back every day, and even though it actually comes back a little bit different every day and continually changing and blah. But we gloss over that and we say, yeah, but this body seems to be reappearing, so what's up with that? So it must kind of be there. But again, that's a fantasy, that's loose thinking, because if you look very closely, you can't find any constancy.
But I think that so I've been looking at this myself and just saying that, this is sort of, it is an energy presence that emerges continually that has really nothing to do with the physical form or the reality.
Which is an energy presence.
Just
the feeling of dying.
This whole sense of and maybe it's just a need to reframe or to see clearly what actually is going on, because it seems to be this constant question mark that comes up to do with, do I exist or not? Is there some sense of continuity?
But that question mark is for real, because there's no answer.
Right.
So that's the real question, and it's a continual question mark, and it will never be an exclamation point.
And maybe that is the sense of mortality. That maybe that is
ultimately that's what it really is, but it's continual. It's not it's not an event that will at some point happen and isn't happening now.
Right. Well, in the sense that I feel like I want it not to happen. I want to. I suppose it doesn't happen all the time, but it is a presence that is there continually. Right. If I look and see.
But if it seems to be stable, then that's a sure sign that it's a projection, because you have to project it as stable, because nothing else is stable. If you see what I mean. Yeah. If it's always kind of the same, then that's a big red flag. Because you can't really find anything else that's the same.
Right.
Actuality, it changes.
Yeah.
So sameness has to be imagined.
Right.
Because it can't be found in actuality.
Yeah.
And of course, it actually changes, but it's not acknowledged. It's the change is sort of erased out conceptually, or denied out of existence, and made into a sameness, which is the very nature of these projections, these fantasy projections. Virtually all concretizations of what one thinks one is, or what one thinks is going on in the consensus reality situation is that, like, your self-image of who you think you are, what you think you look like, what you think your life is, what you think your history is. All people who are shall we say, less unfolded, have a sense that all of those are actual things and actually exist in a very concrete, specific way.
Yeah.
And for those of us who have, looked a little more closely at what's actually going on and penetrated a little bit more into the actuality, it's discovered very quickly that in actuality that is not like that. It's much slipperier than that, much stranger than that, and it cannot be actually concretized as anything with any coherence or any actual nature that has any consistency or identity.
I think that sometimes I just sense that there's this fragment of itself that appears like a reflection in the mirror, that's sort of there, that I catch glimpses of it. But I can never really actually pin down what it is.
Yeah, but that's it. You can't really, but not being able to...
Maybe that is the whole delusion to do with mortality. That the actual sense that I can't grasp what something is actually not a bad thing.
Well, it's a truth. That's clear seeing.
Uh-huh.
You know, if there's something that you feel like you can grasp, that's
Delusion.
yeah, that's a big red flag.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's interesting, but I've been looking at that a lot lately. Trying to kind of apprehend, is there some relevance because it is a thing that comes back again and again.
Yeah. And this is the way, you know, what we could call it, what seems to be karmic patterns appear. You know, things that seem to be issues that seem to have recurrence or relevance that seem to come up again and again, or that we seem to be grappling with, either in our mentality or in terms of, you know, events that seem to recur, or situations in life that seem to be more or less established and we seem enmeshed in, and all of that. All of that is just kind of our own personal tutorial, a personalized tutorial of presenting the way in which, discovering the way in which none of that is actually so.
Right. Yes. Yes.
But it's your own personal cutting edge of that's what you're working with, so to speak.
Yeah, because actually, I mean, there is a way in which having no mortality is, you know, there's a great sense of freedom in that.
Okay.
But I don't know quite how that shows up with apparently having mortalities. Do you know what I mean? Sort of this juxtaposition.
Yeah, but that's the way it is. I mean, there's always, you know, you have no body, but you apparently have a body. You know, you have no history, but you apparently have a history. You have no life, but you apparently have a life. You know, I mean, there's this continual paradox of all of these different modes in which things seem to present themselves, which are arguable, but none of them are actually findable.
Right.
If you look at it.
Sometimes there's pain, sometimes there's no pain.
Yeah.
You know, there's like this mystery of like, well, you know, pain and then it's gone, and then who's having the pain, and you know, it just is this sort of bizarre rattling around really in one's own existence.
It's a bizarre rattling around. It's kind of it's like a tumbler, like a jewel tumbler.
Oh, the dryer.
So you're tumbling around with everything that seems to be anything, and because you're tumbling around and it all continually falls apart and you never actually get anywhere, eventually you get sensitive enough to see, oh, I get it, you know, even though it kind of looks like this, it isn't really.
Well, there is a piece that is independent of that too. You know, there is some sense of, you know, you can call it the observer or the awareness that there is there's independence from that. Yeah,
there is a transcendental, which is all of that and which does all of that, but which is not subject to all of that. And again, you can't actually pin down structurally exactly how that is or exactly what that is, but nonetheless, that is the case. I mean, I call it radiant presence.
Right.
There is radiant presence, and radiant presence is transcendental and not dependent on event. And yet all event is radiant presence, and radiant presence presents as all event. So it's and there's no way in which you can sort that out or draw a diagram of it or schematic or a map and say how that works. All you can see that it actually is that way, but it never comes together into coherence. It never comes together into anything that you can make any sense of. It's fundamentally and intrinsically irrational.
Yeah. But nevertheless, it seems to be valuable for me to try to apprehend what it is, just in order to see that it isn't that.
Oh, absolutely.
So that I can then just get on with rattling around.
No, absolutely. Anything that seems to be there, by all means, have at it.
Yeah.
You know, and that will be a doorway into discovery of more.
Yeah.
And then the rattling continues.
Yeah, well, it's helpful for me to even say that, because kind of get out of this small, you know, thing that I'm doing, just to sort of get some overview, or to be somewhat free of being trapped in the experience, as opposed to just getting to look and see what's actually going on. So,
Anything that presents as anything, to any degree at all, if you come up to it, will reveal itself as a doorway that is standing ajar. And what you go through that doorway, and what it seemed to be, is what you find is vastly more and other than what it seemed to be. If you don't go up to the doorway, it just looks like it's there. It looks like a thing.
Right.
But if you go up to it
Yes.
and let yourself engage with it, you'll discover it's standing ajar, and you'll discover that it actually is a passageway to more.
Wow.
So stuckness is always a result of, having things that are there and not, standing off from them, letting them persist and seeming to be something without actually looking. Yeah. If you push on the door and you discover it's a curtain, it's not even a door, it's diaphanous, and then there was no door, and then you're somewhere else and something else. And then there may seem to be another door, and cool. Rinse, repeat.
I had a really cool experience today. When I got to work, there was this looked like a doorway in the clouds, and the sun was coming right through it, really powerfully.
Really?
And it was beautiful. And I kind of pointed it out to a couple other people at work, and they were like, "Oh, cool," and they just kept walking. And I told the janitor, I was like, "Oh, all right, back to doing this thing." And I was like, "All right, I guess it's not that important." It's so it just kind of got me thinking, the value that I put on that, is a fantasy.
Yes. It's a fantasy, but it's a useful fantasy because it reveals your own process.
Right, exactly. It was useful to me.
Yeah.
To go around and go, hey, grab somebody by the shirt. Hey, look at that, man. It's really important.
Yeah.
That's getting into insanity.
Yeah, sure.
And, but to me, that was kind of what you were saying. That was that doorway that's a little ajar, and it's kind of spurring my curiosity on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think about interpretation in this context, and then relating back to what I was saying earlier. So it's I teach literature to high school kids, and I try to teach them how to interpret a text, a poem or whatever. And the poem is this open thing that can be interpreted in many different ways, and there's a way in which I'll see them stumbling along with their interpretations, and they'll interpret in a very coarse way, and they'll just be imposing on the text in a very uninteresting way, imposing their preconceptions, and then compared to them, I am very much a virtuoso, right? So I can play with the text, I can maneuver around with the text, and I can do all sorts of wonderful, kind of incredible things in that. And that's is it like I am seeing finer and finer distinctions, or finer distinctions than my students, and then I am less attached to those distinctions, and it gives me a sort of city power, or it's
you can't pin it down like that. It may be that you're it may be that it's more refined, but it's not necessarily that you're less attached. And really that's irrelevant, because interpretation and attachment are basically one and the same thing. If you interpret that there is a you to be attached to a result of a particular situation, then that attachment springs to life through interpretation. If there's no interpretation, there's no possibility of attachment, because you have to interpret yourself as existing in order to be attached to something. But beside the point, more specifically, the greater artfulness and subtlety of the way in which you can be in that context with that than for example, the students, reveals your greater refinement in that milieu. But however great your refinement in any mode, you're always exactly halfway between one extreme and another. You never, it's like the horizon, you never get to the horizon. In other words, however artful you are at that, you're in terms of that functionality, you're never, there's always greater artfulness of possible. And as you become more and more sensitive and spectacularly sensitive, that's still the case, always the case. So it's not about functionality, it's about seeing that functionality doesn't matter.
Well, what
So-
about, yeah, go ahead.
So, whatever degree of competence you manifest, the idea is not to gain more competence. The idea is to see that competence is an arbitrary confluence of virtual energies and has no importance whatsoever.
Isn't there like sensitivity and intelligence? Can't we?
Yeah, but the sensitivity and intelligence is not yours. The sensitivity and intelligence is what everything is. The students have as much sensitivity and intelligence as you do. And for them, it's manifest as their apparent incompetence, and for you, it's manifest as your apparent competence.
Yeah.
But there's nothing. But it's not like you gain anything from. Gain is from seeing, not from actually achieving some state. The point is to see states. Don't worry about if they're manifest or not, or if you've achieved them or not. Success and failure, sensitivity and insensitivity is irrelevant. Seeing is everything.
And to see a state, what does that mean?
You don't see that. You see that there is no state. You see that there is radiant presence, which looks like any and all state.
I guess I get caught up. I think I think there's like a way of interpreting from the point of view of realization, or from the point of view of the all or something.
Well, no, the realization, the very nature of realization is that interpretation is unimportant. Realization is not some kind of a meta interpretation. Realization is the actuality within which interpretation takes place or not. So interpretation doesn't matter one way or the other. Again, it's seeing that matters. It doesn't matter what happens or what you do. What matters is to see what it is. So success is no better than failure. It may be more fun if you like to pursue success and you have the ability to do so. By all means, have at it. There's no reason not to. But if you fail, that's cool too, because you actually haven't lost anything. And if you succeed, you actually haven't gained anything. Because radiance doesn't, there's never more or less radiance.
So you could say interpretation is not actually what's happening. Like something's
Right.
happening.
Exactly. And that interpretation is happening is itself an interpretation. And that can seem to be happening. And that's fine. It doesn't matter what seems to be happening. What matters is what it is, and what it is seeable. What it is can be seen, can be known with absolute intimacy, because it is not concealed, it is not hidden, except by its own slipperiness, by its own strange nature, which is so alien to ordinary human modes of understanding.
Yeah, it's really strange though. It's just a strange experience.
Strange is what, yeah. It's all about getting accustomed to strangeness.
Yeah.
Or letting go of the need for any degree of non-strangeness.
Yeah. It's interesting. My work environment is very like it seems very like interpretation heavy. There's a lot of importance, that's
a normal human mode, sure.
Yeah. But it's kind of like a new job for me. So being more immersed in it has actually helped me to see like how ridiculous it is.
Yeah, interpretation is games, basically.
Yeah.
And then indulging in interpretation and using interpretation is all just games. It's just like playing games, and there's rules, and you follow the rules or you break the rules, and that you whether or not you follow the rules or broken the rules is itself a rule. It's itself an interpretation. I mean, the whole thing is just a big game structure.
Yeah.
Just like Monopoly. It defines itself into existence and then plays itself out according to its own definitions. And it's a zero-sum game. Nothing is actually gained or lost if you win or lose a game of Monopoly. And so that's the same thing here. You know, we have success and failure, happiness and despair. All of these things are interpreted into existence, so that it's all just elaborate game structures. But in the context of what is actually here, what is actually occurring, it's a zero-sum game. It's just like Monopoly, because nothing is actually gained or lost. Nothing can be achieved or failed of achievement.
So I essentially just keep on getting stuck in my interpretive context. So it's like I put forth an interpretive frame to view the world, and then I'm confused about why the world doesn't fit that exactly.
Sure. Yeah. That can happen. It can look like that, but see what it actually is. It doesn't matter if that happens or not, and it doesn't matter if you succeed in figuring it out or not. The only thing that matters is seeing. See that when interpretation happens, it only seems to be happening. It's appearing in experience. When confusion happens, it only seems to be happening. It's appearing in experience. And if you look at what's actually here, if you look at the actuality that is present, that's being felt to be interpretation, or that's being felt to be whatever it is, you'll see that it isn't really that. It's not nothing, but it's not findable as anything in particular.
Sort of like none of the above.
Yeah, always do none of the above. Look at anything, and you always and ask yourself a multiple questionnaire about what it is, and you'll always get to do none of the above. If you're seeing, exactly so. Well said. But that doesn't mean you need to stop it. It doesn't matter what you do or don't do, what seems to happen or doesn't seem to happen. Just see what it is. That's the wonderful thing about spirituality. It's not a process, you know, because at least seeing is something that can be left to. You don't need to work your way to seeing. You don't need to stop doing anything or purify anything. You know, just see what it is. So suppose you're interpreting. I'm sitting here, I'm interpreting, I'm Peter Brown, and I'm sitting in a chair, and here we are in East Bay, and I'm in a room, and there's all these people, and we're talking. So it's all that whole interpretation, and it's right here, and cool. So what is it? What is it that's here that seems to be that? And, you know, wow. And so it looks like that, it's describable as that, but when I look at what it actually is, wow. Without needing to erase the room or cancel out the East Bay or make you all disappear or anything like that, because it is intrinsically and inherently wow. It is that, and so just see that that's the case, and then who gives a shit about interpretation? Interpretation.
It's one of those little things that comes up above the head.
Yeah, the thought bubble. Yeah? And even wow, of course, is just another
Nothing.
Another question mark.
So many years ago, when you're reading all these spiritual texts, like you came to realize that they're all just interpretive frameworks, and that you didn't need them because of that.
Yeah, eventually, when I started, I was a completely gullible fool. I mean, I was like really curious, like, God, what are these people talking about? They're going on and on and on. They must be talking about something. So I gave them the benefit of the doubt. I said, okay, show me your stuff. Here I am. I'm going to be a sincere student, and I'd study this stuff like I was, like I was going to write a thesis on it or something. And well, cool. And I did that, and I succeeded. I learned this stuff. I learned all these, all this stuff in these presentations, and it was, interesting and satisfying or frustrating or whatever, and all this stuff. But then one day, regardless of all that, I saw what this is. And in seeing what this is, retroactively, so to speak, I could see what all that was. Which is, of course, the same thing that I was seeing, because everything is the same thing that I'm seeing. So when you see what it is, the apparent details become irrelevant. They don't become needful of elimination or anything like that. They just reveal themselves as actually of no importance. So then at that point it becomes it's just an arbitrary matter of preference and taste. If you like reading things and studying things, by all means read things and studying things. Who gives a shit? But you're not going to actually gain anything by doing so, and you're not going to actually lose anything if you don't.
You may gain something undescribable.
Well, you gain what's undescribable by seeing, not by whether you do the activity or not. The activity can seem to be the vehicle in which you see, but anything can be the vehicle in which you see.
Well, that is in fact
Taking it, yeah.
saying that you get benefit from certain activities, and not from other activities, and so which has really nothing to do with the benefit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The true benefit, the actual benefit, actually the sole benefit, is irrespective of circumstances. Irrespective of process or engagement or functionality. You can be taking your morning dump the moment you have your great insight. It's not like, oh yeah, I was studying, the sacred text blessed by the Dalai Lama, and this, that, manifested by angels, and it came down and it appeared in a cloud and floated 2 feet above my altar, and I bowed down to it 3 times and burned some incense. And
That's what happened to me.
But all that, you may as well just go have a crap.
Yeah.
As you're the vehicle.
Yeah.
No better, no worse. It just doesn't matter.
It's like not even like. See, nothing. It's like nothing happens because of what looks like why it's happening.
Yeah, event is not what it seems. Conditions are not what they seem. Entities are not what they seem. So see what it is. And then you don't need to cancel out circumstances and events and entities, because they're self-canceling by the very nature of not being, they're already not that. So you don't need to do anything about making them that, because that's already taken care of. You don't need to correct seems to be delusion, because it isn't really delusion. It's just elaboration. It's just apparent elaboration of that which is unelaboratable, but infinitely susceptible of elaboration.
It's like even the apparent correcting is self-correcting.
Well,
Like hitting your head against the wall.
Everything's self-correcting. Everything is to realization.
Because I did this, I mean, we've all done it, right? Let's really believed in something and really wanted it to happen. And that was that, yielded a self-correcting result. Like, oh, that was never true at all. Time, tension, energy. But it's great that happened anyway.
The actual nature of events is continually and explicitly and glaringly obviously being displayed and being revealed. So the fact that nothing is findable, the fact that nothing persists, the fact that no things can be found that have any entity or stability, all of this is not even subtle. I mean, it's just time and again and again and again, it's just grossly obvious. And the apparent course of events just keeps displaying this and rubbing your nose in it, so to speak, over and over and over and over and over again. So sooner or later you get it because there's nothing else to get. There's no other result because there is no other result. You never get to any place other than here, and it never works any way other than the way this works. So this is the result. So, but the trick is to notice what it actually is, to notice the way in which that's so. And then you discover what liberation is, you discover what transcendence and divinity are. Well, you never succeed in discovering it to be any other way. So by a process of elimination.
Yeah.
It's an extrapolation of the famous Sherlock Holmes quote is, when you've eliminated the impossible, whatever's left, no matter how inconceivable, must be the truth. So when you cross off all the ways it's not, and you get to the end of the list and there's nothing else on the list, as unimaginable as that is,
Well, they, in a way, are the bots, aren't they?
Yes.
That keep appearing.
exactly so.
Keep saying, but it's true here, but
Yeah.
what about over here?
Your
Then
butts,
you look and say like, oh, no, it
Yeah.
works. there.
anything that seems to be a butt is just a doorway.
Yeah.
And you just go up to it and see what it really is, instead of just standing off and taking it on faith that it's really there and really the way it seems to be.
Well, it's interesting how, we tend to keep the bots in the background, just
Oh yeah.
sort of, apparent doorways to freedom, when in fact they're actual doorways to entrapment.
Yeah. Anything that looks like stuckness is the doorway to freedom. But you have to go through it. Or at least see that it's open.
You go through it by looking at it and noticing that.
See what it is. It's always by seeing.
And not by negation.
No, nothing to be negated. Oh, God. You need not negate anything, and in fact you can't negate anything because you can't find anything to negate. And so that's why the seeing is important. So seeing sees that is the case, and then of course negating it is an absurd notion. I mean, how would you go about negating something that isn't there? Well, obviously, that's the only thing that one can negate by default.
But you take away your positing that it is what you interpreted it to be.
You don't take away anything, you just see it. And the seeing reveals, it doesn't even take anything away, but it reveals that there is nothing to take away.
Yeah. Sometimes it seems like there's hidden groups,
Oh, absolutely.
and so,
Those are the insidious ones.
yeah, because and sometimes I'll feel like, oh,
Yeah,
there you are,
yeah.
but But I have this deep suspicion that there's more there to hide from you. That continually manipulate me.
Yeah. No, this is absolutely true. You know, and you'll notice this, you know, in the beginning of yoga, there's all sorts of things that are kind of obvious, and so you can sort of tackle them. But then there's these deep hidden ones that you don't even know are there, that are more insidious because you don't know they're there to tackle them, to even look at them. So the trick of that, like using pigs to find truffles, the trick of, I imagine, never having actually used a pig to find a truffle, but the trick of that is anything that feels like it's a certain way, no matter how generally, that's a sign that there is a belief there, even if it's not obvious. But just the feeling tone, you know, the most concrete and the most explicit tool for navigating yoga is the feeling tone of reality. You know, in delusion, reality feels closed, stuck, solid, entrapping, separate, painful, tormenting. And as one progresses in yoga, it progressively feels more and more open, more and more diaphanous, more and more radiant, more and more generous, more and more inclusive, less and less anything in particular, and more beautiful and intrinsically wow. So when there's anything that doesn't feel like that, when there's anything that feels like there's something there that you sort of, you know, energetically are coming up against something in any sense whatsoever, then that's your pig telling you there's a truffle there. So you do it. You navigate the yoga by feeling texture. Because, you know, very rapidly it goes beyond conceptual. You know, I mean, when you're just starting out, then you think, oh my gosh, yeah. You think about all those sort of things you've thought, and they're easy to see through. But then this other, you know, as you say, this other deeper layer of things that are just held to be a certain way are you know, it's difficult to even know they're there.
Because that is the actual nature of reality.
Yes,
That,
exactly.
That expansive open space.
Like the death issue, like you were talking about. That if it feels like it's something, then that's a sure sign that check it. Look there. There's a doorway there that you can actually go through, and which will go beyond whatever that seems to be, and you'll know that. You'll know that going beyond by what it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, that's the term ghosts that they use in many circumstances. And those ghosts of experiences from the past that have the sense of, you know, foreboding or dread or whatever. There's just a tackiness to them.
Yeah.
That, in fact, if I go and look at that doesn't actually exist anymore.
Right. But you don't need to actually negate that or erase it or have that kind of experience not occur. Just see that it's not anything.
Yes.
And then it will feel it'll feel like a ghost.
Yeah. Well,
instead of feeling like something's threatening.
It evaporates.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't actually exist anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, that's been helpful for me anyway, to have that happen again and again in different circumstances. You know, in circumstances where I would normally have felt apprehension or fear or, you know, that vice-like. But I mean, actually, the truth is, when I'm in that setting and then I look around, I realize, like, oh, that's interesting. I don't have any of those feelings. You know, there's actually, it's sort of like a dissolving of, you know, the bubble. Bursting the bubble.
Yeah. Reality feels very mirage-like. It feels like an infinite mirage that is infinitely rich in its presentation, but there's nothing there. So, you know, the texture of it is like that.
And as you say, it isn't nothing, because that
it's not nothing.
To
it's
just
not
exist
anything.
in that experience actually is incredibly powerful. far as changing an environment, not that one would set out to do that or as such, but it's interesting to sort of play around with that and see how it kind of creates a new
Oh, yeah.
dynamic that is hard to put your finger on, but
Yeah. It's probably more useful and accurate to say it's everything than to say it's nothing.
uh-huh.
But having said it's everything, there are no things. You know, this is you know, the whole image of, you know, in various traditions and mythologies, there's this image of the primal force as a magician, or the image of Maya, you know, or all these various kinds of images of these weavers of spells and weavers of delusions and weavers of dream. Because the nature of reality is that it endlessly projects itself as infinite implication without ever becoming anything. And yet it is that, and it does that, even though you can't find the that it is and the that it does, but nonetheless it's completely, you know, self-verifying.
It's the Joker.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is. It really is. And that's not an alien force that's imposed upon it, that's its nature. It's intrinsically radiant. And it radiates an infinity of nuance, an infinity of implication.
And surprisingly, it has no nature.
Yeah, it has no nature, and it has all nature. You know, it's just intrinsically pure paradox.
Well, it's interesting too how radiance can ignore itself or appear to.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. There's no limit on what it can seem to do.
So what is it that so like when you're talking about the truffles and there's that which senses a belief. So all we can say is that which senses a belief is radiance.
That which senses a belief is radiant, the belief is radiant, thing is radiant, what it seems to be is radiance, and what it isn't is radiance.
And sense is radiant.
There's nothing but radiance. So there's no point partializing it or you know, indicating portions of it. Why don't we knock off for 10 minutes, take a little break, and we'll be back shortly.
What sort of pie is it, John?
Apple.
Apple. We're an apple pie.
And has ice cream.
Thing of Peter.
Yeah.
They said it was a little fuzzy. It looks,
What, visually?
on mine it looks okay. But is there a way you could reboot it or?
No, the image is fine.
Okay.
Tell them to clean their screen or
I don't know.
clean their glasses,
There's
clean their eyeball.
complaints from the peanut butter. I think it is.
Stop smoking that stuff.
What?
Stop smoking that stuff.
Can't clean your drugs.
Or smoke that stuff. Not sure which. That's okay. It wasn't very long after the sale.
Great stuff. Yeah.
Whoops.
My file there, should I go to that?
They go with, it's not opening.
Gotta go.
Everything was set right in front of you.
What's the story of your t-shirt?
I have this student from China, and they come from this school called Pingha, and I don't know. I guess Shade is some sort of name of a company that sponsored them or sponsored some sort of event with them. Or, I'm not sure, but with a present to me, they gave me one of those shirts from an event. So, and today was their last day, so I wore the shirt. Yeah.
The attendance, is it? Is it the
What's
attendance?
been going on?
Well, it's my students.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, it's,
Just chilling.
I'm going to need a place to eat today.
Oh, okay.
How do people find you?
Oh, so
What do you gotta do? Just
Right.
like,
my bosses for this job,
Yeah.
I was on campus and there were these girls who were graduating from college, and I was hitting on them because one I found quite attractive, and these Chinese girls, so I was talking to them in Chinese. And so they stuck around after graduation and they started this tutoring business. And so I've been tutoring for them. Like I had, cool. I had told them that I teach like desk prep stuff, so they started that sort of desk prep.
That's like the number one thing I'm trying to fix.
yeah.
How are you?
I was the sort of person
Your
that
new
Work.
teaching?
they would
Hey,
want to hire.
yeah, it's going.
Spoke Chinese and I could have a lot of
Yeah, the
experience
first,
with PhDs in Berkeley, so.
It's It's gotten easier. Let's put it that
You don't
way.
speak
Yeah,
Chinese.
it was pretty like
You don't speak Chinese.
frantic
Yeah.
Oh, you do?
because I got me in there kind of last minute, like a week before
Because I
school
used to
started.
live in Taiwan for a couple of years.
Is it again, your switch?
They hired me like a week before school started.
Oh, that makes it easy.
Yeah, exactly. So I had to do like a lot of catching up, and it's kind of a weird culture, and there's a lot of like this specific school has a lot of like, kind of issues. Just kind of issues. Yeah, it's like right next to the freeway, and right next to the construction site.
Well, how is it?
K through 8. So it's not ideal. But like I said, it's gotten a lot easier. Yeah. It's good.
Is there a lot of steppers like this to make sure they don't go? That place is like a freeway.
Oh, no, it's all good. No, the gates are locked. Anyways, there's a street and there's a big divider, so it's good. Yeah, but it's like the pollution.
What?
The pollution.
Oh,
That's like the main thing. So I'm like running the air purifier, and staying inside as much as possible.
In Oakland?
Yeah, it's right by Fruitvale Park.
I used to work there.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Not ideal.
It's a sad place to grow up, I think.
Yeah.
Dangerous.
These kids seem to be having a good time at school, so. Shut my tea.
Good pie. Good pie.
Great ice cream. Like the cherry vanilla.
I'll reconvene us.
goodbye,
Is it-
goodbye.
is
Back
that
to asking,
possible?
what am I?
The,
I got
the inadequacy and mediocrity of this bell is pure radiance.
It looks pretty. It's made from.
No doubt that's the point.
Not before. Just like you.
So, Peter, you still have very subtle beliefs that you bump into.
I have all kinds of beliefs. I don't believe any of them now.
That's key. That's absolutely key.
I mean, you could say I believe anything and everything when I do, but I don't play favorites. Beliefs are important. The point isn't to eliminate beliefs or to stop beliefs. The point is to see what it is. You know, as one moves into deeper realization, as one moves into unfoldment, it's a very strange condition in many ways, because all of the apparent limitations and neuroses and mediocre functional aspects that we're intimately familiar with in ourselves don't go anywhere. They're still here. They're revealed as occurring and consisting of a context that is utterly beyond that, which is also here. So it's a in practice, it's a very strange coexistence of vastly different and conflicting perspectives and viewpoints, all coexisting in a way that doesn't make any sense or doesn't come together in anything. But one sees that all of that is radiant presence. So none of it is important in its own terms, even if it seems to exist and or persist to whatever degree it does. The simple fantasy that the ego and the personality is erased and becomes plain vanilla, and you ascend to luminous heights and become a angel of benevolence. I mean, ascend to luminous heights, you discover the luminous heights are right here, and you discover that what this is an angel of benevolence, but it can also look like a neurotic jerk, raised in America with all the absurd brainwashing that came with that, and blah, 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 blah. And that's all very strange and unresolvable, but everything is very strange and unresolvable, so no surprise.
But sometimes realization leads to big changes in the personality.
It may or may not. Everything leads to something, but it may seem to, but you can't actually verify that that's the case. It's not important. But seeming results and seeming events are unimportant. The only importance is to see. And then then things may or may not happen, but who gives a shit, because it's not important, because the only thing that's important is to see. I'll say it again. Ask me another question.
And then once one has seen, one can do or not do certain things to unravel seeming conditioning.
Sure, who cares? You can try and do, let's say you can try and do anything you can seem to try and do. But again, you do because you won't actually gain or lose anything. But that doesn't mean that you can't do it or not, or can do it for that matter. So you're free to try or pretend to try, and you're free to pretend to engage in anything.
Well, that being said, some things are more fun than others.
Oh, absolutely. And by all means, follow your fun, follow your pleasure as much as you can.
Yeah.
Why not? Unless you have a perverse nature that seeks pain or unpleasant, but in that case, that is your pleasure. So but it's all good. again, what seems to happen in the apparent course of events is unimportant. It's what it is that is the sole importance. And that can be seen. It can be known with absolute clarity. Self-verifyingly revealed that it is the way that it is. As one comes into it, as one comes to see it.
The prayer is really just praying to oneself.
Well, essentially, but again, it's pointless trying to qualify that anything is or is any particular way because, again, it can't be resolved as such. You can't know what anything is.
Right.
So, but prayer as an action or as a state or as whatever it may seem to be is unimportant in itself. So you're free to indulge in a degree that you're drawn to, but the important thing is to, again, always see what it is, and you will come to see that it is unimportant in itself. Will not actually gain or lose anything as a result of doing that.
And this felt like it gave a wider birth.
Yeah. Anything, I mean, by all means, if something seems to be helpful or useful, have at it.
It's not consistent.
Whatever, I mean, it doesn't matter. Again, it doesn't matter. But ultimately, seeing will be discovered to be completely independent of apparent events.
Right.
Even if it seems to be related to certain events at certain phases. In that if you do certain things, seeing is easier. And that's fine. So if that's the case, take advantage of it. As one matures in seeing, one will come to see more and more clearly that that's actually not the case. That it was just circumstantial evidence, so to speak, or coincidence that it seemed to work that way in your particular apparent karmic display. But by all means, take advantage of anything.
Yeah.
Lie, cheat, and steal, so to speak. Or pray. Pray love. Define a phrase. Hey, that'd be a good book title.
With lie, cheat, and steal.
Lie, cheat, that's a better book title. I'd sell more. You heard it here.
Don't know. She did pretty well.
Hey. Walk into a bookstore and you see Lie, Cheat, and Steal with a catchy cover there. You're gonna walk up and look at it. Okay? You may or may not buy it, but you're gonna walk up and look at that shit.
I think there's one thing, pray love.
Well, some people will walk up and look at that, but everyone's gonna walk up to Lie, Cheat, and Steal. If it's got the appropriately whimsical cover.
It reminds me of Steal This, when the Abby Hoffman Steal This book.
What's the cover we have?
Well, I'll tell you one thing it wouldn't be. It would not be a picture of Hillary Clinton. Even though that may or may not be appropriate.
Yeah.
In some ways.
Yesterday I had a white enough pissed off that I ever didn't know that the wide birth existed. It was like really why the fuck? What the fuck? Go through all this misery.
No, I know for sure. I get it. And it's easy to have all kinds of takes on it like that. Go through the hell of one's karma to discover one doesn't have to go through the hell of one's karma. You know, but kind of in paradox to discover you live in paradox.
It's a bit like doing a jigsaw puzzle. You don't do a jigsaw puzzle for anything other than doing the jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah.
Is there a trick to seeing through when you're having physical issues?
Well, the trick to seeing is the same always, although you can say it kind of is adopted into different textures or different apparent contexts. But it's always to see what is actually substantially present experientially. It seems to be physical difficulty, say you're in pain. Rather than just being in pain and feeling the pain, you know, like look and see, how do I know I'm in pain? What is present in my experience that I'm calling pain? And then go right into it, so to speak. Not necessarily in imagination, but experientially. See what experience, precision, with great precision and engagement, what is actually present. And you will discover that it's vastly more nonlinear and strange and incoherent than it may seem to be when it's just being held to be pain and you're being annoyed at it or whatever. The trick is always to be more sensitively and precisely engaged, like sort of adopt a scientific frame of mind of say, well, what is it that's here? Study it, so to speak, and then not intellectually and not at a remove, but study it experientially. What is this experience what is this actual, what is it that is actually present that seems to be that? How do I know that what is it, what am I calling being? And it means something is present in my experience. What is it that's present in my experience? And answer that question as thoroughly as you can experientially. And it can be because especially with something like have a long history of habitual stances with regard to pain. So it can be useful to practice with minor pains. Like if you have a hangnail or something that's annoying and arguably painful, but it's not, you know, excruciating, you know, knock you out of the park kind of pain. You can practice with that. And you can sort of develop the technique when it's easier to do. And then when you have a more severe pain, it will be easier to do the same thing with it.
I sort of have a memory of being a little kid and having certain types of pain. Probably the first time I ever had that particular pain. I was enormously aware of it. Right now, I mean, I can just sort of picture me in my bed.
There's a gestalt, when there's pain, there's a sensation, but then there's also annoyance at the sensation, or perhaps a desire that it shouldn't be so.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's all of this complex layers of mentality and of emotion that all get lumped together. And so, and that can be ossified into the experience of being in pain. But it's actually not coherent. It's actually not the way it seems to be. And if you look at the actual experience of what sensation is, it starts that whole gestalt. The various layers reveal themselves as non-essential. And in fact, the actual stimulation, the sensation of pain itself, reveals itself as being and more complex and non-linear than it seems to be at sort of first flash.
It's interesting. I've had that experience with.
Pleasure. For that, you do the same thing with pleasure.
Right.
And any sensation whatsoever. Pain is usually, I'm sorry to interrupt, pain is usually kind of a worst case thing because we're, it's like, what's the worst experience you can have? Pain. It hurts.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I've had that experience where the line blurs from like intentionally being whipped. I happen to know this crowd of people that was into that whole thing. So they were like, try it. All right. So yeah, it was painful at first, but then that line blurred.
Yeah.
And it wasn't painful or pleasurable.
Yeah.
It's just kind of.
Yes.
Yeah.
But unexamined experience can seem to be a certain way, more or less solidly. But when you begin to examine it experientially, a little more intimately, it reveals itself as weird and unresolvable and strange and multidimensional, and it opens into complexity, into a simplistic coherence of it being this or that, or whatever it's being held to be. And of course, this applies to any and all experiences. This is the very nature of seeing. When I'm saying see what it is, to see the actual, in detail, in precision, the actual presence of what is being experienced. And this is the opposite. A lot of people seem to have the notion that spirituality is some sort of lapsing into vagueness or into dreaminess or into, sort of the ultimate escape. And this is exactly the opposite. It's getting more precise, more present, more examined and fully biased with exactly what is present. And paradoxically and miraculously, one discovers that what one thought was there is not there. And it opens into, a panorama of otherness, and all of that otherness is also not there if you continue the process, and which opens into further panoramas of otherness, and so on and so on and so on forever. If you look closely, actual present experience, it opens to infinity. Concretely, or abstractly or intellectually, concretely opens to infinity of incoherence. Realizing down into simpler and simpler and more specific and more solid and stable. Any and all experience.
My butt there would be, well, what if I'm in severe pain? Which is seem to be like,
Sure.
something happening. It seems like it's never going to go away.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the answer was, well, it's not here now.
It's not here now. And in fact, even, severe pain, any pain whatsoever, if you look at it, it's continually morphing. It's not actually one thing that's stably there, sitting there. It's continual morph of innuendo that, it's morphing and going through phases. And I mean, it's just a bizarre light show. And so even in the moment, it's already going away and becoming something else. Even if the something else is here, not going away, and then it's simply disappearing, it's actually continually disappearing.
I use Lama's method for childbirth.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's basically the same thing.
yeah, and in some way, I mean, there were supposedly, the labor pains were sort of rhythmical, and and you sort of learn about that, what that is, but
So
it doesn't
personal, I imagine.
in reality. A close examination of my labor pains, Lama's can work. I actually use Lama, sort of that method, instead of Novocaine sometimes.
Sure. I mean,
No, I mean,
but this is a whole other way of looking at pain or any sensation. It's a corollary. If you can go into it and it opens up into otherness, or you can notice what else is present, and the spectrum of what is present is revealed to be ever more and more and more vast and infinite. So by relatively, whatever is there, the pain or whatever, is revealed to be relatively smaller and smaller and smaller.
No, that was another part of the Lama's method.
Yeah, well, that's the essence of it.
Focusing on some object.
Yeah.
Or
yeah, you're in your breath, or you're doing so.
Yeah.
So the pain's there, but all this other shit's there too.
yeah.
Because if one of the things that the mind does to create suffering around pain is zoom in on it. And, it hurts, the pain. I can't feel the pain. The pain is huge. The pain is everything. The pain is all. But that's a lie. The pain is not all. Experience is there simultaneously. It doesn't go away, and the vast majority of it is non-pain. It's certainly not that pain. You're just noticing that right away. It's like, well, yeah, there's this pain here, but it's right here, and like, what's here, and 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 blah 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 blah. And infinity appears, and only one of them is that pain.
Right. So it becomes one of those.
And that again also applies to any and all experience. Suppose you're you're depressed, or you're in a pissing, psychological state, or whatever. That's like, and typically again we might invest in it and get all lost in it and indulge in it all narcissistically, But again, if you dial it back and look at the pattern, the full spectrum of experience, there's a vast actual present qualities that are not that. Also, just as here as that is, and so again, the myth that this is so huge and important is a balloon that gets burst.
So if I'm feeling like some particular emotional texture, that's no important than anything else.
Yes.
But maybe because of how my system is set up, I to interpret it as being
Sure, perhaps.
more important.
Sure. And even doing that is not more important than anything else.
And there's because of that interpretation of this is an important thing, then there might be also like the desire to try to unravel that as if that is something. So it's just a bunch
Well,
of
big.
different, it's just a bunch of different interpretations lined up together.
But instead of thinking of the interpretations, just think of them as energy presences. And again, suppose there's this whole chain of energy presence is present. That's there, but what else is here? And again, you'll just find an infinity of other energy presences which are other than that, which are also here. And are they, are they chopped liver? Are they any less important than a particular thing that you're obsessing about?
Okay, and it is possible to like see all of that, right? See that, okay, this they call some depressive texture, right, is no more important than all this other stuff that's going on, right?
Of course.
However, I might as well just work to unravel it.
Yeah, or not. Work to unravel it, or don't work to unravel it, or indulge in it, woe is me, and all of it, none of it matters, actually. It doesn't matter what actually happens, what you do or don't do. But once you see what it is. If you don't see what it is, then you'll probably find yourself lost in strategizing about it, trying to solve it or escape it or replace it or whatever. But if you see what it is, you'll see that that's needless, and so you just let go because who gives a shit? It has no actual importance, which may have the effect of actually dissipating its importance, and also may have the effect of making you not give a shit whether it seems to be important or not, or
Might have the effect of dissipating it.
mine. Again, when you see what it is, you don't care whether it dissipates or not because you don't.
I can feel like those internal, seemingly internal. I like this term, but you kind of feel those like buts, and it's sense the like agitation or seeing the importance of it.
Mm-hmm.
But all I need to do is see that.
Yeah.
And then it's like it can be there or not. It doesn't matter.
It's just a spontaneously occurring mechanism, which is a little tiny subsystem of your personality, which is a tiny subsystem of your entire energy field. So the whole thing is just a little autonomous thing doing itself, which doesn't have any particular importance at all. Like right now, this computer's here that's broadcasting this event, and in the upper screen of the computer, there's a little readout that shows the time. That's a system that's in there. The computer's continually churning out the time and continually displaying it on the computer. And that's there and it's available. But it's not particularly important. On the scale of what is present, that tiny little subsystem that's doing itself, it's like how drastic, how urgent is that in the scale of things? And virtually anything else is analogous to that.
Yeah, it may only seem important at the moment because that's kind of just seems like my focus kind of more on that at this.
Yeah, because it's the nature of your personality to have those kind of mechanisms which are functioning in that way at that time.
Yeah, but just in the experience of being here tonight, it's like I could say most of the time I've been here that hasn't actually been important. Like it's just like the mirror, or what was happening, the sound from outside. Or,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
the sense of putting importance on like pain, for instance, um, as part of like, and at one level, I see why that would be, or would seem very important, but I guess it's just a interpretive framework, right? So like I want to say, oh, well, because the organism wants to survive, and the pain is an indication of disease or poor function or something like that.
Sure, I mean, you can say that, but, you know, again, even the degree to which that is the case is still a tiny subsystem of a vast infinity of energy.
Oh, and part of the belief is thinking that you're the body. But,
Yeah, of course. You know, the presence of qualities that can be classified as body is a tiny area of the full range of the field of experience. Most of your experience is non-somatic. To take inventory, most of your experience is extrasensory and not somatically oriented at all. And even your sensory experience is largely non-somatic, even if you conceptually imagine it as having a somatic basis. I might say my field of vision is being perceived by my eyes, so it's based in my body. But in fact, most of what I see is not my body, so to speak, in simplistic terms. I'm seeing, you know, the Roman year and whatever. I'm seeing the night sky. I'm seeing the, you know, the local galaxy and such, which is, you know, it's not this. So this appears in the field of vision, but most of what appears in the field of vision is not this. Or to the point, if you look within the entire experiential field, the fields are tiny. In the state, we're ordinarily sucked into our sense fields, I suppose. And, you know, the field of vision is huge and the field of hearing is huge, and that's all that's happening. But if you actually look at your field of experience, you'll discover most of it is this infinite, edgeless, boundaryless expanse of essentially seemingly nothing by comparison. I mean, it's this, you know, seemingly black, you know, you can't say what it is, you know, but maybe, you know, infinitely fine little flickers in it or whatever, you can't say. Well, here's this, you know, here's the field of vision way down there, this little circle dot of light, and here's here down there, this little dot of vibration, here's sense of touch down there, a little dot of, you know, tingling, and so on and so forth. Context within that, which that's happening, it's like looking at the Earth in intergalactic space. You know, it's this tiny little dot. Of course, usually we're zoomed in, so the Earth looks like huge, but that's a function of perspective. It's not a function of actual size or actual even importance.
So, like I've had this experience of like, you know, being in dreams and being kind of like aware of, okay, this is like my astral presence.
Mm-hmm.
This is like the flavor of what it is, experiencing that.
Mm-hmm.
But then also like, being apparently in my body and kind of having that same experience.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like, oh, that flavor is here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that it's like in some other place, like that's a fantasy thing.
No, but you can't say what it is. You can't make a schematic of it. Yeah, you can't make a schematic of it. You can say there's ways in which it's different and there's ways in which it's the same, and there's no way you can actually delineate that or sort it out or parse it and say, no, this is this and that's that. Yourself like that. You can find infinite degrees of apparent sameness and infinite degrees of apparent difference, and none of it goes into sufficient coherence to draw any conclusions from it.
Right. And intellectually, and yet like.
Well, but not just intellectually, but yeah, sure, even intellectually.
I do feel like I can experience like this ability to distinguish.
Right. Distinguish, but if you look closely at what that is, again, it gets slippery.
Uh,
It's not as cut and dried and obvious. They seem to be just, from a knee-jerk first take.
so, okay. Yeah, it's very slippery. It's kind of like, well, is that my actual experience or is that a subtle fantasy I'm entertaining?
Yeah, and again, and you can't even answer that question,
Uh-huh.
Definitively. You ultimately always get there.
Well, fuck, figuring it out maybe, but.
Well, it is delicious and fun.
Yeah.
And not being able to figure it out is a large part of its delicious funness.
What's so good about that?
Come on in, the water's fine. Whitewashing this fence is a lot of fun.
Well, it's an interesting experience of like testing this, even entertaining that question, is it an actuality or so fantasy, kind of gets me. Earlier, it's kind of like an inspirational investigation.
Yeah.
A way to get into investigation and just more experiencing.
Anything that loops you back into engagement is a plus, is a yogic efficiency as opposed to a yogic inefficiency.
Well, what's engagement? Engagement is noticing a sense presence.
Well, no, you can't say what engagement is because there's nothing but. Do it anyway. What is engagement is an excellent Cohen. So solve it. Answer the question. What is engagement?
I only answer by doing.
Yeah, well, you answer by looking.
Well, this is simple. Just doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, that's what you get to. What the fuck? Where was I? What is that? What's that even mean? Compared to what?
Engagement is pure play.
Pure play. Say everything is the supremely transcendentally urgent, important process of reality itself. Two ways of saying the same thing.
Well, a moment ago you were saying that like the body experience.
Not likely.
A moment ago you were saying that the body experience is a little dot in the universe of experience, right? And yet there's a tendency for engagement there. There's a curiosity and interest there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So,
Maybe.
So I wonder about that specifically because like like I'll go to sleep and then like I don't know, before dawn I'll oftentimes wake up and I'll just be sort of lying there and I'll basically be doing a sort of relaxation or like body meditation, So like I was doing that today and sort of noticing, well, I oftentimes sort of notice here and like there seems to be lightness or like the energy moves more freely in than in here, or like there's just like that and then so I just keep on like I'll daydream and then will wander and then I'll return there and I'll be curious about and be curious about like the seeming density or the comparative density. And like it's not completely dense, it's the lightness within that density. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's just playing with it, and there is engagement due to interest. I still wonder about that sort of like the body scans of Vipassana. I kind of wonder what I'm doing. Part of what I'm doing is I'm trying to, like, I have an interest in clearing up whatever the perceived density is here and whatever I perceive density here.
Mm-hmm. So what about that?
Well, I don't know. That's just my experience, and I guess I kind of wonder. Well, I guess I want to interpret that experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to interpret it as well as that is there a productive thing going on there? Is there like a Kundalini thing going on? Like, am I being woken up?
So you want to pin down the interpretation?
Just say, good job, Galen.
Great job. We need more and rigid interpretations. More and rigid. Well, one way of seeing yoga as the subtle energy clearing the bandhas in the subtle energy body. Bandhas are knots. But it's important to see what that actually is. What the bandhas really are is something seeming to be a certain way. They're rigidities of objectification. And the way to clear them is to the energy, which the nature of the energy is intrinsically transcendental, and it flows amorphously and infinitely, so that no objectification can stand up and be found within that. To see what it is the shortest and most efficient way to do that, because when you see what it is, you essentially tune into the subtle energy presence, whose intrinsic nature is one of dissolution in terms of objectification. So doing that literally with your body and feeling your body for tightnesses and things like that is a rather heavy-handed, fairly limited scale version of doing that. It's fine as far as it goes, but again, the way to clear the bandhas is to be the energy, and the nature of the energy is such that it cannot be restrained, it cannot be limited.
You were saying a couple of minutes ago about sensing into the energy presence. What you were saying?
Yeah, sure. Presence, yeah.
And sensing in that I'm making a mistake by connecting that too much to a body sensing.
Well, don't interpret what that means. Entirely and completely transcendental and infinite. which means you find it, but it isn't actually where you're looking for it. It's everywhere. It's not anywhere. So go to the energy in its nature, and you will be nowhere, and you will be unrestrained, and you will be limitless, which you actually already are, because that's what the energy is, even though it can appear to be otherwise. But the more you notice the nature of the energy that constitutes all of this, the more you discover that self-verifying. So it's more efficient just to go to the energy, so to speak. Or feel the energy, or let the energy show you what it is. I mean, there's all sorts of ways to euphemize that, and one has to stumble on what that actually means. So, suppose you feel an energy condition localized in your body. Okay, so right away, it's not actually in your body. It's an energy condition that is manifesting, it's a manifestation of the subtle energy presence. And the subtle energy presence is not actually localized, and it's unlimited and infinite and not objectifiable. Feel that, then the in your body part becomes irrelevant as a seeming, and that it's tight in an area becomes irrelevant as a seeming, and all of that in its irrelevancy is cured, whether or not it may seem to appear. But at that point, it's just a mirage, so who cares? So in other words, you can use that as a jumping off point, but don't stay there. So you can feel the energy condition of your body as a starting point to prime the pump, but then use that as a jumping off point into what's really there, which that's just a diving board you're jumping off of into something else. Your body feeling the energy and trying to do something about it. Because then you're just standing on the diving board, you're not jumping off. You can't have a good swimmer unless you jump off. The energy is the water in the pool in that analogy. Standing on the diving board looking at it isn't going to do you much good. You got to jump in.
If I'm doing like Qigong, jumping in means, doesn't mean tracking the subtle energy, it doesn't mean feeling into the subtle energy.
Means that, but when you do that, it stops meaning that, because in subtle energy, it stops being anything, or I should say more accurately, it reveals itself as everything.
Or something.
I mean, so you're doing your Qigong, and then all of a sudden you're everywhere and nowhere, and you're God and you're the universe, and you're nobody and you're nothing. And you may or may not still be doing Qigong, but at that point, who gives a shit? Yeah. But if you're just standing there doing Qigong and you're still doing Qigong, you're standing on the diving board. You haven't done anything. The point of doing Qigong isn't to do Qigong.
I had a fun Qigong teacher a while ago, and he could tell when you thought that you were doing Qigong.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it at the time. And then when you would actually like feel that you were the thing that was happening,
Yeah.
you're not separate from this activity, you
Yeah.
are the activity.
Yeah.
Then he would go, yes.
Yeah. Sure, exactly so. I mean, and this applies to anything. It's like if you're going to drive your car, if you're driving your car, you're a terrible driver. If you're driving your car but you're not driving and there's no car, you're a great driver. Or if you're playing music, I'm a musician, for example. If I'm playing music, it's going to suck.
Yeah.
But if music is happening, it's not me and it's not playing, then it's great. And this applies to absolutely anything. Or if you're scanning your body, if there's a body and there's a you scanning, it's nothing. It's going to be terrible. But when there's no body and there's no scanning it, but you're still scanning your body, then that's great.
So I understand it pretty well with like acting.
Well, that's fine.
Or doing like comedy improv, right? And it always seems like it's a returning problem. Like, how do I self? And that's like.
Well, the easiest way is to see that you're already out of yourself, and then you don't even need to step out of yourself by not even having to address it. Seems to me, I mean.
It sounds like the easy way out.
Yeah, by all means, but you go for the easy way. You can do this the easy way or the hard way. It's your choice.
Short path to the long path.
Yeah, you can do the short path or the long path. What do you choose? All right, then jump off that board. Jump off that diving board. Or better yet, just have it drop out from under you.
The water is so deep.
Yes, it is.
Sharks.
Yes, there are. But the sharks aren't sharks, and the water isn't water, and deep isn't deep, so you're good.
But they're dangerous.
Danger isn't dangerous, so you're still good.
That's the good thing about having a teacher who makes it very easy.
Well, you're fortunate I'm a lazy man.
I didn't sign up for any sharks.
That's right. Exactly. No sharks.
No shark, thank you.
No sharks have been harmed in the production of this yoga.
Running for president.
There's always write-ins.
That's a good idea.
There's almost that.
If I'm elected to president, there will be no one in the office. I guarantee it.
I love it. No shark tanks.
No one for that.
So I start with the energy, and then there's nowhere to go after that.
Well, I am the energy is where you start. So if that's a diving board, what does jumping off it look like?
Remain in the place.
There's no I, there's no M, there's no energy. But nothing goes away. So then what is it? Where are you?
Well, I keep on thinking there must be some sort of development.
It's development. That's a diving board. How do you jump off it?
There's no development.
Yeah, but you're not canceling development. It's irrelevant whether or not there's development. Because development isn't development. But that doesn't need to stop being development. It happens to not be development. Time isn't time, but you don't need to stop time in order for it to not be time. It already isn't time. So you can have as much time as you want.
There's no time.
Because there's no time to stop. So you don't need to stop it. But it's,
He says, looking at the.
but it's 8:50 and there's no time. So where's the diving board? If it was 850, that would be a diamond boy. If there was no time, that would be a diamond boy. But it's 850 and there's no time. It's clear to me, huh?
Yeah. Sounds like you're not finishing your sentence.
No sentence ever is finished. Trails off into incoherent mumbling. And the final punctuation of every sentence is a question.
The dots these days, you know, are just dots out there.
Yeah. And when I text, I almost always end with a dash or dots.
Yeah.
Well, what does the dots trailing off into infinity have to do with virtuosity of expression?
Absolutely nothing.
Just love the way you crack.
I'm a semantic idiot.
No, it's like cities are virtuosity of expression. The cities arise
Sure.
in midst of trailing off into nothing.
Sure. The cities always arise from trailing off into nothing.
Trailing,
Trail. So trail.
worse than Trump.
I'm much worse than Trump.
That's why you should be running for president.
You would just destroy your body and your country and your world. I'll destroy your universe.
There was a universe that could be destroyed.
That's what makes it easy to do.
Really enjoying this.
I expect.
I want to see posters that say, "Let's help Peter Brown destroy the universe."
Don't need any help. I can do it single-handedly. Thank you. It's really just a public relations job.
There's questions that you won't answer because they imply too much.
No.
Like there's questions about like incarnation or something. You won't answer those questions. You also you won't answer.
There's no such thing. We talked about incarnation at great length. But there's no such thing as incarnation to ask a specific question about or to answer a specific question about. The whole issue of incarnation is infinitely slippery. And the slipperiness is what's interesting, not the incarnation.
Reincarnation?
Incarnation, reincarnation, reincarnation, de-incarnation.
But like
See, the mistake is, if you think there's something to ask a question about and you think there's an answer to that question, you're barking up the wrong tree.
Or if you think there isn't even anyone to ask the question to.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
Well, the Pig Brown might have any answers that would be helpful.
When have I ever given you any reliable, useful information?
Yeah.
well, this is always like a presentation of slipperiness.
Yes. That's the most useful information there is. And it's not an information that can be conveyed verbally.
But it is style. Right?
Absolutely. It's nothing but style. It's all style and no substance.
And style is virtuosity of expression.
I don't know. Style is expression. Whether or not it's virtuosistic, you can take up with the critics.
Check the style guide for that one.
There's a few seconds you can get in one more.
Okay, I'm still stuck at the beginning of like, seems like there's disciplinary procedure whereby one becomes a virtuoso and
Well, how does that stand up on the light of our conversation this evening?
There's no virtuosity. Virtuosity.
All right. So, can you see that? Can you play with that? Can you flirt with that? Can you argue with that? I mean, is that other than just words coming out of your mouth? Is there anything there that seems interesting, or relevant, or powerful, or learning, or?
What's that around the room?
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess it boils down to I want some sense of power or ability to do something.
Okay, good. You want a sense of power and ability to do something. That wanting is a presence, right? You feel it. Okay, cool. What else do you feel? What context does that feeling occur in?
It's like, well, there's also a sense presence of neediness.
Yeah, but
There's all
let's
these
get,
qualities
okay,
in
there's
it.
all the personal narcissistic qualities. Cool, that's a given. What else is there? Is there sound?
Uh,
Is there thought? Is there, you don't know what? So that's there too. So what about that? So, I mean, in other words, so you want this or you want that. Okay, cool. But what else is there? So it's not about the particulars. It's about the whole field.
It's like I want to cordon off certain parts and work through them and be done with them.
That's fine. So there's that wanting, and that's here, but that's a small thing in a vast field.
Yeah.
What do you do with that? So what's up with that? Anyway, on that note, I will turn off our internet connection.